Story 1, Take your dog's poop back. I live in a small cul-de-sac off a main road. Our neighbors to one side have been nothing but a thorn in our side since they adopted two medlarge breed dogs that they just let roam all over the cul-de-sac. Mainly, they let them shit on any and every front lawn and don't bother picking it up. It's been a thing where I've made a point not to let my own dog poop on the front lawn, so I know if I find a pile out there it wasn't my dog. It's been such a problem that I've made a post about it here before. Well, it happened again. Doing some pruning in the front yard, I find two piles off to one side. I've been having some insomnia the last couple nights, so I know this is the perfect time to return the piles their dogs so generously left behind. At about 1 a.m., I went outside with baggie in hand and instead of putting it in their garbage can like last time, I tossed those piles directly into the middle of their driveway. No bag, just poop. One kind of bounced and rolled under a car, but the other was a firm splat onto the pavement right next to the driver's side door of a different car. This morning over coffee, I heard a disgruntled expletive and subsequent hose splashing. While I'm sure this won't stop the poops from coming, I think I've found my new favorite way to return their dog shit. Rocket Manscaped says, I have a neighbor who lets her dog run around our cul-de-sac pooping. When I tell her to stop I get the no habla. So I started throwing it on her roof, right above the front door. It doesn't rain much here but when it does it brings me a smile. One Thash SNT Taken says, right after buying our house, it became obvious that the next-door neighbor's very large dog had been using the backyard as its bathroom. The dog was a gentle giant that just didn't know any better, but his male owner was a dickhead. For example, there would be folks walking by out front, and I would hear him quietly say, "Go ahead smidgen, go see them." That 130 pounds Roddy would lumber out after the walker and their dog, with no intent to cause harm, but his very large presence would scare the shit out of them. And I could hear him laugh, and make minimal attempts to get the dog away from them. It didn't take long for me to realize what a horrible, miserable person this prick was. I wasn't afraid of him or the dog, and I made several attempts to ask him to not let his dog shit in my yard anymore. But yet it continued. The breaking point was one evening when I went out to harvest some fresh herbs out of my garden to use for the dinner I was preparing, only to find a giant, freshly deposited pile of dog shit in the herb garden. I'm not an aggressive person, but damn it, that pushed me over the edge. I loaded that giant loaf of shit into my long-handled spade shovel, and launched it with all my might into the side of his garage. We're talking 30 years ago, and I can still hear the glorious sound that shit made when it hit his garage wall. That spineless bastard knew where that huge splattering of shit on his garage wall came from, but never confronted me about it. Fu Ray Naked Pagan 666 says, please do this every night. Gather all the poop from your street and dump it on their driveway. Story 2, The End of the Prankster. When I was a young electrical apprentice, I had a foreman who was constantly pulling practical jokes. There is a fine line when pulling a practical joke and it being borderline harassment. We will call my foreman Bob. Bob was always pulling one stunt or another on folks, and especially those folks he didn't like or didn't respect. One day I became the butt of his snide remarks and it escalated to one afternoon at lunchtime. I grabbed my lunchbox and the handle snapped off. Bob had loaded 50 pounds of nuts and bolts inside and to add insult to injury had thrown my lunch away. I decided right then and there I was going to fix him. 3 weeks later we received a new Toyota propane-fueled forklift. I was working in a material supply yard for a construction site. In addition, the area our yard was in had just been paved. The forklift ghosted through the yard like a stealth bomber. It was actually quite dangerous as it was too silent. Then the planets aligned. Bob had become predictable in his habits. At 1232 every day he would run out of the office and use the porta-potty that sat on top of a wooden pallet. There was no one else in the laid-down yard as the rest of the workers and apprentices were delivering parts to the job. I grabbed the keys to the forklift and ghosted over to the porta-potty. I silently slid the forks into the pallet until the guard on the forklift was against the door to the porta-potty and then yoinked the whole thing 6 feet in the air. I put the forklift in neutral, pulled the parking brake, and turned it off. I then slipped away to deliver an entire load of 2 inches EMT to the second-floor crew. Bob hung in the air in that sweltering porta-potty for a good 2 hours before anyone figured out where he was or why the commode shack was jacked up 6 feet in the air. To the best of my knowledge, Bob never pulled a practical joke on anyone or was mean and cruel to anyone again. He learned his lesson. The week Bob retired, I made my confession of who parked him in the air, and we parted on good terms. Joe 402 says, Bob hung in the air in that sweltering porta-potty for a good 2 hours. Bob, you good? You're looking a little _flushed_. Butch_F says, you gave Bob the raise he deserved. Doorbell Endoscopy says, Bob must have been really flushed and uplifted with the higher level pranking. Thanks for watching. I love you. Follow Reddit Echoes for more.